Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, August 21st, 2023 West Fargo City Commission. We call the meeting to order. The first order of business is please join me in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next order of business is to approve the order of the agenda. It has been distributed and is in your packets, Commissioners.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the order of the agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item D is the approval of the minutes of August 7th, 2023. They have been distributed. They are in the packet.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of August 7th, 2023 as distributed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E, for information only, is the building permits. Again, they have been distributed. If there's any questions of planning and zoning, Mr. Aaron Nelson is here. Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner George, and thank you, Commissioner Anderson. I have a motion by Commissioner George, a second by Commissioner Anderson to approve the building permits as distributed. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next order of business is a consent agenda. We have items A through C.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as distributed, items A through C. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to the regular agenda. At this time, we are now in the public comment portion of the West Fargo City Commission meeting. Members of the public will be allowed 2 minutes and 30 seconds to address the City Commission on their concerns or issues. There won't be any official action taking place. And with that, we will begin. We have, at the present time, we had two individuals that have signed up. The first of those was Mr. David Withy. Mr. Withy?
Good evening. My name is David Withy, 2421 McLeod Drive East. Thank you for your service. With all due respect, I'm addressing the budget and property taxes. The school district is asking for $133 million for new schools renovations. A $100 million mixed-use project is proposed next to the Lights District. Like the Lights, it will probably be a TIF district, which means property taxes are used to pay for the bonds over 25 years, but nothing pays for city services, even though they still use city services. And now a new combined city hall and police facility is possible for $80 to $100 million. The police addition to City Hall was less than 10 years ago, and I guess now is already insufficient. City staff wants to increase the mill rate by over 4 mills. Total property tax dollars have already increased 48% over the last 3 years. This year, debt service is 30% of our budget, as it was last year. With the way we're going, it could soon be over 50%. This year is the first time property taxes increased by over $3 million. Last year was the first increase over $2 million. Meanwhile, on average, over the last 5 years, over $4 million in property taxes were not collected due to various exemptions, most of it TIF and pilot related. City long-term debt has doubled over the last 10 years. How in the devil will we expect to pay off all this debt? How are taxpayers supposed to keep paying more and more and more? I'd recommend not approving the senior living project on tonight's agenda. Soon, seniors won't be able to afford to live in West Fargo. It seems the city is very creative with how to spend money. How about some creativity in how not to spend money, or at least to spend less? Maybe a two-story building, which won't need as much land. How about cutting back on tax breaks, which aren't even needed? Perhaps we should slow our growth until our finances are better. Thank you for the opportunity to address you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Steve Marquardt.
Good evening. Steve
evening.
Marquardt, 725 15th Avenue East. Kind of some of the same things that Mr. Withy just talked about, but didn't have a chance to talk to him. But anyway, a couple things I'm looking at is the city of West Fargo. Do we have too many city employees? You know, how is it possible to use our city workers to pave our streets? What were these people usually doing? And all of a sudden they have time to pave the streets. So are there too many workers on, on the payroll, so to speak? Is it time to end the tax abatements and the TIFs? We should be working on balancing the budget and lowering taxes, not on giving these breaks. West Fargo isn't on sale, guys. People want to live here. And so that's something we need to look at. And last but not least, I believe the City Commission is not being honest with the taxpayers of West Fargo. You mentioned the mill increase of somewhere between 4.94, 4.77, I think it is now, will only raise the taxes by a small amount. That small amount is based on a $100,000 house. How many $100,000 homes are in West Fargo? In 2021, the average or medium, however you want to look at it, price of a home in West Fargo was $291,478. In 2022, it was $318,250. Okay, what's it going to be in 2023? Personally, my house, I had an increase of $642 on my tax bill, which comes out to about $53 per month. You might not think that's a lot of money, but to a lot of people, that $53 a month is cutting into their things. We need to look at what the needs are and what the wants are. Right now, we need to focus on the needs. There is a responsibility by our city commission and to take care of the taxpayers. Like I said, maybe it's time to end the TIFs and the tax abatements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Those were the only two citizens that had signed up to participate in our public comment. So at this point, we will close the public comment and move on to the regular agenda. Item number 2 is child care grants. Casey Sanders Berglund, our Economic Development Manager, will be presenting. Good evening.
Good evening, President Commission Dardis and Commissioners. Second here. Before I jumped into our overall grants, I wanted to just give you just some overall information, baseline information. Currently, we have had 47 complete applications that have applied for this grant. 3 chose not to move forward, and I have 2 fully complete projects. So the majority of those projects, however, are finalizing some items. They are waiting on some contractors to get back to them, stating details around work, things like that. However, I would like to also share that I did have 3 applicants. Oftentimes when projects come to you, they're always wanting to move forward. I wanted to let you know that there was 3 applications that did come forward in which I didn't feel met the eligible requirements. So those are projects that were very close to the city limits. So we removed those from being considered, as well as 2 projects based on the items that they were requesting did not meet the eligible requirements listing, and so therefore we did not move those forward to the Economic Development Advisory Committee and bring them here tonight. So to move forward, in total tonight, I have 13 applications, and this first group of applications, as you can see in the packet, is the in-home providers as well as the in-home group providers. So you can see all of these applicants or providers are currently existing. This round, we did not have any per se new childcares that hadn't opened yet. However, 2 providers are new as of 2023, one opening in January, one opening just this June. And that one I can speak to specifically that this was kind of the push to move forward and finalize her license. So each one really has different reasonings based on need. Each one of them are outlined in the packet, and unless you want me to go through them line by line, I did pull out some of the highlights. Specifically, a lot of the items lean towards the fact that they're deferring some of their maintenance, elevating some of the pain points here. So they have been, excuse me. Oh. Okay, sorry. Lost my point here on my notes. So essentially, most of them are looking at shifting their ages to take on new age ranges of children, as well as taking care of some of those line items like child size equipment, which oftentimes at this point has become still usable, but a lot of times, for lack of a better term, have some like duct tape fixes that eventually lead to licensing violations or potentially closure. So I'm open to answering any questions about any of the applicants. You can see the first application on here, they're transitioning from, right now they have all ages up to school age, and they are going to an all infant center. So it's a small dollar amount that really is just helping them complete that transition so they can care for only infants. And you can also see that there's 3 applicants that received some prior funding. And I want to be very clear that this was planned on their behalf to apply for an additional level of funding not to exceed their eligible amount. And they applied for their priorities first, and this is probably the second piece to their overall application. When they applied the first go-around, this is a conversation that I had with them, and we both agreed that that would be the best first step for them and move forward in this fashion. With that, I would open it up to any questions overall about the grants. Otherwise, I would be seeking a decision on the 9 applicants here for the in-home or group in-home providers.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? I have a question.
Yes.
So the inspections that take place at daycares, I know that our fire department does an inspection for safety. Is part of your criteria that the applicants submit their most current inspections that they also get from North Dakota with regard to if they're in probation, on probation or whatever, without making some improvements or like?
Sure.
Either our fire department rule regulations does the committee review that so we're not investing in something that's at risk, so to speak?
Great question. It's not a document that I ask them to provide, which I certainly can add that to the criteria list, but I do have a copy of their most recently approved license on file.
Very good. I just wanted to check on that. Thank you. Commissioners, anybody else?
Make a motion to approve?
Commissioner Olson moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second?
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the initial 9 as presented this evening by Casey Sanders Berglund, our Economic Development Manager. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. I could move right on to, there are 4 center applications as well. And I apologize for the lengthy, the lengthy packet, but I wanted to make sure that you had all the information for each application. So the first center that I will discuss this evening is the Learning Universe, and I'd prefer to have a vote per application, if you don't mind. So the Learning Universe, some items of note, they have been a provider or in operation for 17 years. There is currently a new owner of this property. Tricia has been in this property and has a year-to-year lease. However, I spoke with her today, and she actually just signed a 3-year lease that starts this November. And that'll become more important later on as this conversation moves forward. She is licensed for 78 children, and should the additional square footage open based on the fact that there would be additional square footage, she would be able to request an updated license and potentially add more children. The total she's applying for today is $43,500, noting that the maximum eligible that a child care center is approved for could be up to $50,000. In this request, again, I included in the packet her entire request with every line item. However, I'm just going to highlight the major items of note. She would like to add security access, like a key fob access to the entrance for parents and child safety. Her fence is in need of repair. She provided a quote for the labor and the materials for that work to be completed. And she would like to add some updates to the bathroom, restroom area that is original to the building, and some adapters. So noting that the restroom is up to code, she did have a conversation with the new owner, and that owner is open to participating at some level, however, needs to kind of review everything as they've recently taken over the property. And then lastly, looking at some updates to commercial play area. There is a play area that already exists, but would look to do some repair and updating. Again, Economic Development Advisory Committee reviewed this application and recommended it for approval contingent on signing a lease of a minimum of 3 years. So myself and the owner of the Learning Universe, Tricia, is in the audience and available for questions.
Thank you. Questions, Commissioners? So when your committee receives this application, is there photos that go along with it showing the items that they're, like you said that the fence is in disrepair? Is there photos that accompany this that the committee reviews and observes?
Sure. So I would say no, there are not specific photos. However, each owner is required to come to the economic development meeting and answer all specific questions. So in this case, and for all of these, specifically if we're talking about a line item for a fence, we would have a conversation as to why is that fence in need, what part of the fence is in need of repair, what is that work? And so for this one, we have a full quote. There's some removal and then labor that goes along with that, as well as the fixing of that area of the fence. So it's not an entire fence that goes around the property.
Do you do an on-site visit yourself?
Not to every project.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner.
Thank you. I'm okay with this, but I'm just wondering, again, as the mayor said, without pictures, how do we really know? I mean, I think if this is fine, but in the future, I think we should require that they send in some, or bring pictures so we can tell, what's wrong.
Sure. I'd be happy to include pictures in future applications. I will say that when it comes to these larger projects, and maybe it's a good reminder that once a project is approved like this, in order for them to have access to those dollars, each and every item has to come in and be reimbursed. And so I have to see quotes from a reliable contractor as well as that paid work, and oftentimes those come with schematics or drawings, et cetera. But, you know, I'd be happy to do on-site visits. I'd be happy to meet with them I often meet with each owner one-on-one and discuss their needs, but if that is a priority for us to take those pictures and add that to the documentation, I can certainly do that.
Trust but verify. That's all.
Sure.
I think you're supposed to quote where you got that from.
Yeah, I
You
got
can't
that
take
from,
credit.
I can't take credit for that. I don't know who said it, but it sounded, Ronald Reagan said it. That's who said it.
That's who said it. So again, Ms. Berglund is asking us to act on these individually this evening. So with that said, we've had the first presentation. You want to continue with presentations, or you want us to deal with them as we go?
If
Commissioner,
you,
what's your pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Commissioner George has answered my question. She's moved to approve the first grant for $43,500 as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded. Commissioners, is there any further discussion on this item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? That one carries. Please continue.
the second application is for Explorers Academy. This provider currently has a total of 6 locations, one of them being in West Fargo. This location is applying for both the center and infant fit-up grants. This location is 3 years into a 5-year lease currently. They're licensed for 71 children and have 55 enrolled based on their staff capacity. Pending their approval or completion, and of course staff capacity, they're at the potential to add approximately 10 infant spaces. So noting specifically, there probably wouldn't be a shift of a total enrollment, but shifting their plan of work to including 10 infant spaces. He is applying for $50,000 for the center and $15,000 for the infant space fit up. The highlights of this request would include repairs to the walls, like patches and paint throughout the center. I would note that that is a licensing violation, or could be, depending on the severity of those nicks, tears, scrapes. There is a need to update and add child-sized shelving, units, cots, changing tables, as they do have a space that is underutilized currently within their already owned center. They also need some support for their outdoor play area. Right now, they're in all of their locations, they're looking to make a transition to using rubber mulch due to some safety concerns that they have. They are adding, they would like to add security-controlled access to the front area. So, for example, this request specifically states that they're looking for around $10,000 in that support. And I've seen quotes that for various different systems, depending on how many doors, could be anywhere from $5,000 up to $50,000, depending on which system you're looking to do. So just an item of note for that line item. But economic development, again, a committee again reviewed this application. They had a very robust discussion around the safety upgrades specifically, and the potential to add some additional infant spaces. In the end, they did recommend this for approval to the commission. Joe is a representative here from the Explorers Academy, and he and I would stand for questions on this application.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Just a comment on, under the paint and wall repair, that isn't just paint and wall repair. As I understand or remember at the EDAC meeting, it was kind of like a fit-up too, wasn't it, to build some new walls and things like that? Or am I got the wrong?
It can be, but I think you have,
The wrong application?
you might
in
have the
mind?
wrong
Okay.
application for that
Well,
one,
one of
but
them did.
yeah, some space there.
Okay.
Could you give me any other information with regard to exterior hazard repair of 10,000?
Yeah, I would actually lean on Joe to just come up and speak about his center, if that's okay with you.
We're here at your pleasure.
Absolutely. So Currently, if you're aware, this center is located in I believe it's called the Pioneer Place, which is just off of 9th and 13th is kind of the intersection, so they're on the corner there. So in order to meet licensing standards, they do have to have a fence along that busy line, and then specifically would have their outdoor play area in the back area. But
Emily, is one of those mics portable for the gentleman? Make it more convenient for him?
Oh, there you go.
Very good. Good evening and welcome.
Hello, Your Honor.
The question that I had was, one of the line items, exterior hazard repair. Could you just, in general terms, tell us what we're repairing there? What's involved?
Yeah, so we have added, so some of the repair is to putting in synthetic turf and rubber mulch, due to the simple hazard of the kids playing in wood mulch, getting slivers, getting cuts. So I have made the, how do I want to say it? I have already started the process, but the cost of this has been significant. So we put this in, and with licensing, as far as the building not being mine, we have to still maintain licensing rules. And certain things the landlords will not pay for, which is actually taking care of their outside of their building, which is painting and et cetera to their buildings. So some of that, if there is paint chips on the outside, that all has to be addressed, due to, especially with toddlers will pick the paint and eat the paint, and so that is part of the whole cost of this, is to add the rubber mulch and put in synthetic turf. And we are, on part of this grant, it is going to give an area for kids 2 years and younger, a set area just for them, so there is no safety hazards, and easier for employees to manage these kids in that area.
Thank you. Other commissioners, any questions? Thank you for coming this evening. What's your pleasure? Again, this is, I'm sorry, there's something else?
No, would you like me to go back?
he's just wondering if he should stay.
No, not necessary. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Commissioner George moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Olson. Been moved and seconded for the approval of the second application. Item 1 on the second application is for $50,000. Item 2 on the application is for $15,000. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carries. Please continue.
The third application is for a provider Creative Minds. This, I'm sorry. Okay. This location is applying as well for both the center and infant fit-up grants. They are in year 3 of a 10-year lease, currently licensed for 170 children. However, the current enrollment is at 136. As we sit currently, they would not grow in overall capacity, but would again shift their priorities to have more infant care. I'm sure you can all hear the trend that they've been getting call after call after call of people desperate for care for infants. This application is also unique as they are growing in their school age program and wanting to be more intentional with their school age program, as it's full-time in the summer and part-time during the year. Oftentimes those school agers get shifted and moved around from classroom to classroom. This will allow them to be more intentional for those school age children while also being intentional with their infant care area. This request is for $49,800 for the center and $7,180 for the infant fit-up space. The majority of this request is due to an asphalt fix in their outdoor play area. Again, there's a lot of moving parts with this, but unfortunately, this project was done only 3 years ago. It's not under warranty anymore, and unfortunately, all of the quotes that they've had requested to have this work completed have come back right around this $30,000 mark, and kids continually trip, and it's continuing to get worse and create more and more of an upheaval or a bubble in the asphalt, and it's right in the direct high traffic pattern of their play area. So it's become an increasing need for them to budget to make a change. Should this get approved, they'd be able to shift those priorities towards the other things that they have in their center, like staff and some of the other equipment that falls under deferred maintenance. The other two, maybe higher priorities in this area, in this application, is that the entrance is a high traffic area, and when families come to look at this space, that is their first impression, and oftentimes that becomes very nicked up and banged up and can fall under licensing violations at times if the walls or flooring are not maintained regularly. And then their child size equipment simply just needs some updates and a few additions for their infant fit-up space, cots, changing tables, and then educational learning equipment, mobile activities for their infant fit-up area as well. So again, they are really focusing for their grant to get their outdoor, I guess for lack of a better word, hazard fixed as it's continuing to get worse. And this is essentially what we spoke about at quite length during the review at the Economic Development Advisory Committee. And they did want to move forward and recommend this for approval. However, they would like that the owner get 1 to 2 more bids to ensure that it's a competitive bid. The owner, or Representative Cassie from Creative Minds, is here. Should you have any questions for myself or her?
Thank you. Questions, commissioners? Comments?
I'll move to approve.
Commissioner George moves to approve. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve this line item for Creative Minds Child Care Center for the tune of $49,800 for the major portion, and then the infant room for $7,180. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Please continue.
The last grant for this application was Nurturing Dreams Childcare. This provider opened in November of 2022 and has infilled an existing space that is continually transitioning to accommodate this new use. This location is applying for both the center and infant fit-up. The provider is in year 1 of a 3-year lease. However, is open to signing a long-term, say 10-year lease after the 3 years are complete. She's currently licensed for 44 children, but has the potential in the space it could change after this renovation. She could serve up to 57 children, potentially 8 infants included in that number. This request is for $46,981.78. And $15,000 for the infant fit-up space. The highlights of this request include removal of a wall and the labor. Essentially, this was a former clinic, so the spaces are all, from what I understand, 10 by 10, and so that stops you from having larger square footage. So removing that wall will open that up to creating more space for licensure. Again, this space does need a repair of fence. There's we offer a door replacement opportunity in this grant. However, after being in this space for just less than a year, she does not need any new doors, but the handrails that were in there for this clinic found out quite quickly that these children can open these specific handrails, so they are not safe for her, as well as adding guards to the hinge areas of the doors. So instead of replacing full-on doors, looking just for some support there, but that adds up pretty quickly. And additional restroom sinks and changing areas for diapering. There is a leveling of one area in the yard, which is interesting. I did have a conversation with the childcare who previously started in that area, and they said the same thing about this particular location. Repair and replacement to their existing commercial play structure. This location I have actually been to, and really they have a great play structure. It's really just needs some replacement from general wear and tear. And then as they're adding infants, potentially 8, they would like to specifically add some outdoor infant activity equipment that does cost high dollar value, and one of those items specifically being one of the larger strollers that you would see that you could use for, like, say, 6 to 8 infants. The Economic Development Advisory Committee did review this application and had a great discussion about how this was a former clinic. They like to see that this is conforming in use and now is functional and maybe positioned to expand. So Anna, the owner of Nurturing Dreams, is present, and she and I could stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Commissioners? Commissioner Anderson?
So I see here the requested amount for the center portion is $46,981, but then on the details, the total is $49,955. Was there something that dropped off out of the request?
On the detail, like, yeah, on the staff report?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. The total amount is the amount shown on the agenda page, the $46,981. I can make that change on my report.
Okay.
That's the correct dollar amount. So to that point, once I met with Anna and we discussed all of the line items, some things have shifted as we discussed through what would be eligible, and for her, some of the work ended up being a timing situation, so some things she did need to move forward, and so those were removed from this application. So sorry about that. Thank you for noting it.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
You mentioned one of the things being leveling of the yard. Where is that reflected? Is that under exterior hazard?
Correct.
Does that include reseeding or anything like that once the yard is leveled?
I didn't ask that question specifically, but that quote was for the entire project, so I would assume for the project to be made whole.
Okay, great, thanks.
Additional questions, Commissioners?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner George seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the Nurturing Dreams Child Care application for $46,981.78 for the center and $15,000 for the infant addition. Is that correct, Ms. Berkman?
Correct.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
That's it of that, is it not?
It is, yes.
All right. Moving on to number 3 then is the Cass County Housing Authority pilot. Again, we'll call on Casey Sanders Berglund, our Economic Development Manager, for this presentation.
Mr. Commission President,
Yes, sir.
I did have just one threshold matter that just for the commission's information and public information, housing authorities are tax exempt under state law, and the only way that a city can collect taxes from a tax exempt housing authority is through a pilot agreement. So it should not be viewed as a tax exemption or abatement, this is the only way that you can collect taxes from them. Just for
I
clarity.
wondered about the language that was in the packet. Thank you.
And the
Mr.
state,
Shockley.
and state statute specifically uses the word pilot. And so that's the mechanism that you get taxes out of these housing authorities. Otherwise, if we took no action, you would collect zero taxes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And maybe there will be an additional point of clarity too. The Housing Authority of Cass County is seeking a 17-year pilot for low-income senior housing. I'm sure that you recall on February 21st, the county commission, the city commission meeting, you did approve rezoning and a parking reduction as the plat was approved for this area. And when considering this pilot, some things to note, that this is a low-income senior housing for ages 62 plus. There's been many questions around if that is true and a fact that it will be for 62 plus, that there are 2 phases. Phase 1 being 35 units plus a community space, phase 2 with an additional 36 units. Noting that the Housing Authority does have over 300 seniors on their waiting list currently, and I'm sure Derek will touch on that, but continues to grow. And then there was the MetroCog's recent study on housing that leaned into the entire region's housing needs, but also one of the notes around affordable senior housing was included in that study. And then in the outline of this project under the funding portion, I do want the project owners to come and explain how that funding model will work, because there are a lot of moving parts, and essentially noting that the for-profit entity will come in for the first 15 years of ownership, and then the property will transition to ownership for the Housing Authority, which is then when the property would have would legally have no property tax. They are requesting 17 years, so when looking at that 2 years difference, there's a few things that factor in there around the purchase of the land compared to other projects that they've done, say on Cheyenne Street, where they did not have to purchase that land, as well as inflation and cost, but also the fact that this low-income senior developer has done these projects and their lived experience has been such that the legal process to move the for-profit entity that's coming in to take their tax credits and move them out of the project can take approximately 2 years. And so I will let them go into a greater detail. I just wanted to note before turning it over to this team that in the packet there is information about the voluntary annual payment that this group makes to cover the costs of emergency services and has made continually on their projects along Cheyenne Street, for example. And then some additional renderings, their full pilot application, as well as their project resources or sources and uses outline. So I will turn this project or this conversation over to Derek from the Housing Authority of Cass County.
Before you do that.
Yes.
I have a question. You reference in the body of the cover that this is phase 1 and phase 2.
Correct.
All the numbers that you're presenting this evening are phase 1?
So that is outlined in the, let's see, what is it called in here? Let's see, I can show you.
Page 3, the 17 years?
Yes.
I just want to make it clear to the public. This is only for the phase 1.
Correct.
For phase 2, 1
No,
and 2?
it's for both phases. It's for both phases. Yeah, it's for both phases.
Very good. Please continue.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. Derek Johnson, Executive Director, Housing Authority of Cass County. Thank you, Casey, for outlining that and putting the bigger packet together. Really, I'm here just very briefly. The Housing Authority of Cass County exists to serve the low-income households of the county. And one of the major things that we've been looking at over the past 7 to 10 years is, does our current housing infrastructure meet those needs of today's low-income households. Most of the properties that were originally built by the Housing Authority were from 1963 to 1968. We haven't really built anything beyond since 1968 under the public housing program. So that's 55 years roughly to 60 years old. The project that we did along Cheyenne Street over the last 5 years were properties built in 1963. We were able to demolish 84 units of public housing, transition the subsidy into the new construction, and develop 123 units of affordable housing on that same site. The culmination of this project that we're proposing, a two-phase project, will take 40 units of public housing in Castleton, North Dakota. We will sell those projects. Those were both built in 1963. Take the housing subsidy, the federal dollars for that, transition it into Elson Shores, which is the property in West Fargo here, and develop a proposed 71 units of affordable senior housing. So really that whole process involves multiple functions within housing and urban development and a lot of other funding sources. We've got our incredible team from Beyond Shelter who are the developers who work all of the magic on putting these dollars and these funding sources together. The piece that I'm most excited about in this is that this property does what we've already begun doing, which is taking the existing dilapidated and depreciated housing inventory and replacing it with more units that are built in today's up to today's code standards and meet the needs of the residents. One of the key pieces of this particular project of note is that in the 1960s, Castleton was a very different community and West Fargo was a very different community. Over the past 5 years, as we've had vacancies come up in that property, we have filled those vacancies almost exclusively with individuals from the Fargo and West Fargo area. And really, for most of those individuals, it's I need a home quickly, I need a shelter quickly. Oftentimes, they're coming out of a direct homeless shelter or a homeless situation. Oftentimes, we try to help get them a ride to Castleton because they don't have a vehicle. Castleton is a wonderful community in our county, but the state has shifted. The way that most social services are provided now are through the human service zones here in Fargo and in this community. We don't have any public transportation that currently runs between here and Castleton, limited healthcare options, limited social service, limited groceries, limited, you fill in the blank of all of those services that most of our low-income housing tenants rely on in order to have a wonderful existence and enjoyment. And so as we look at this, that's kind of the focus of why we're looking at how do we find ways to transition that subsidy from Castleton into the community of West Fargo where those services are available. So the site that we've identified and that we've graciously had the replat and the rezone done on has a bus line right on it, is across the street from the Rusted Center, is just down the road from Sanford, has grocery, banking, restaurants, you name it, churches right there, even within walkable areas. And so it's a really great site for what we're looking to do. So the benefits are more than just looking at it from a straight dollar amount on the pilot or kind of the tax incentive side. It's allowing us to increase the amount of housing inventory that we're using to serve those in need. The needs analysis that Casey mentioned specifically identified seniors as being some of the most cost burdened in our community. 64% of senior renters are cost burdened. And there's a specific need for housing for families earning less than $35,000. Currently, we operate 110 units of senior housing here in West Fargo. The average income out of those 110 units is $18,700. So when you look at where that money goes on a monthly basis, if you're paying a half of that or 60% of that or 70% of that in rent, there's not much left over. The project that we're looking to do has layered subsidy so that that household is only paying 30% of their adjusted gross income in rent. That's the goal of providing that housing subsidy through the choice voucher program and project-based vouchers in those units. So we're really serving the lowest income. I think the 30% of AMI is about $21,000 now, so these are below 30%. These are extremely low-income households that we're serving with the Housing Authority, and this particular proposed project will meet those needs for years to come. With that, I'm going to open it up for any comments or questions for the Housing Authority. Otherwise, I'm going to have our team from Beyond Shelter speak more to the details of the pilot.
Questions, commissioners? Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening and welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm Christopher Miller, Development Director of Beyond Shelter. We're a nonprofit developer of affordable housing. We've been in Fargo for, next year will be our 25-year anniversary. We currently have 352 senior affordable housing units in West Fargo, and our vacancy rate as of August 1 was 0%. So there is a huge demand for affordable housing. And how we put that together is very complex. It is costly. So I'll just go touch on Elson Shores a little more. Again, it's two-phase project, 35 units, 36 units. One of the pieces that is important and what we strive to do in our affordable housing projects for seniors is we create a sense of community. We have a community room. We have Meals on Wheels. We have a tenant support coordinator who will spend 71 hours a month connecting tenants with service providers, identifying needs for assistance, and also doing activities. So again, it's creating that place where seniors can call home. They can live independently longer. So, and then having those services come to them, because a lot of them don't have transportation as well, which is why the location that we have for this project is so important. We will have 15 fully accessible units, so we'll be increasing the accessibility for seniors 62 and older. And again, it's close to healthcare, retail, and that matters when we're doing an application for funding. We are scored on how close we are to those services. And also, we want it to be as easy as possible for seniors. As far as an asset to the community, Elson Shores will bring more than $21 million in private equity for the project. And that's through utilizing the federal low-income housing tax credit, where we are awarded credits from the state of North Dakota Housing Finance Agency if our application is approved, and then we go and sell those to investors, and then they give us say 85 cents to the dollar, and we use that equity to build a project. And Derek did touch on taking Section 8 and building these. This is kind of the new model that HUD is looking towards, where they're taking their older dilapidated assets out of their stock, and then developers are building affordable housing where the project takes care of itself. It pays property management fees. It pays for maintenance. And it's to do it for a period of affordability of 15 years and then an additional 15 years. So you can't just raise rents up right away and things like that. So it literally is affordable for 30 plus years. And again, we're addressing the West Fargo 2.0 redefining tomorrow plan, where we're increasing the affordable housing stock within West Fargo. And what this does is it keeps grandma or whomever, a lot of residents are moving to Fargo, West Fargo, to be closer to family. And it's allowing them to be with their families within the community of West Fargo. And we're also providing quality homes. These units will have washer, dryer included, dishwasher, air conditioning. So they're built to last, and we want to provide that for our seniors, a growing population. As far as an economic impact, one of the things is construction jobs are created during the building of these projects. And also there's additional jobs annually that can be created with the residents that live there as well. The pilot will allow the project to be economically feasible, and to buy down rents to affordable levels and to afford to pay the perm debt payment. Because increased construction costs, especially post-COVID, have dramatically made our projects much more expensive to build. I mean, we try to do it the best we can, but you know, we're supply and everything, we've all experienced those issues. Inflation, and now the new thing that has made these projects more difficult and the need for the pilot is higher interest rates on our construction loan and permanent debt loans. And for the pilot, this is also committed leverage for our funding applications. By having the pilot approved, this will allow us to apply for other sources of funding outside of the low-income housing tax credit from North Dakota Housing Finance Agency, which allows us to fill the gap between those sources. For the pilot, it's $100 per unit for 17 years with a 2% annual increase, in addition to paying the taxable value of the land. And I believe there was in the packet chart that, or a table that shows how that all works out with the phase 1 and phase 2, and then the total. And then this also allows for the project to pay for essential and emergency services. And then once, after 15 years, the Housing Authority will become the sole owner of the project. They will continue to pay a certain portion for taxes to maintain those services, as they do already with their properties. And that is it. Now I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Questions? We're good.
Just one last comment that I'd like to add. This afternoon, myself and the team from Beyond Shelter and Derek from the Housing Authority did.
Casey, would you lean in a little more? to the
Yep.
mic? Thank you.
This group here that presented this project this afternoon did present to the Cass County Commission as well, based on timing. And I did want to make sure that you are all aware that they chose to table their official vote until the city makes their formal vote first. However, due to timing and state statute, they needed to formally respond within 30 days. So that is where that's sitting, and I wanted you to have that information before
Thank you.
moving forward.
And I understand that you've met with members of the county commission, vetted the project with them yourself as from a West Fargo standpoint, and the impact that this would have on the 17-year abatement and all of that.
I have, with three of the county commissioners.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you. I wanted to give a little speech on seniors and the vulnerability and how much, we need this housing, but I'm a little lack of air, so I'll just make the motion to approve the pilot.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve the request made this evening by Cass County Housing Authority. Before we go on, I want to say that when the structures along Cheyenne Street were redone, I happened to have the pleasure of being one of the speakers at that event, and afterwards we were given a tour of the entire facility. And in many cases, the tenants had their doors open. And it was amazing to see these men and women that are now part of our community, whether they were initially or whatever, their gratitude and thankfulness of a facility as well constructed and the amenities that are there, from the community rooms to everything else. Opportunities for meals, the whole thing. It is amazing. The statistic that was brought up earlier by one of the speakers of $18,000 medium income is, we all know what in this day and age what that means. So, with that being said, the facilities that were built in 1963 through 1968 that were raised, and the new facilities were built are significant to our community. They're good people, and we're helping them with some of the very basic needs of life. Now, I only have one other question. Our neighbors to the west, with these 41 units that they're going to be losing, are we going to be hearing from commissioners from Castleton regarding this issue? Mr. Johnson.
That's my job. So I've met with the Cass County City Commission, the City of Castleton Commission. Everything sounds like Cass, it's got it in the name. A number of times over the last few years. We've had an environmental review done on this proposed disposition plan, and we will be meeting with them formally in either September or October to get the full support of the disposition plan. So I mentioned multiple moving parts. So one part is the way that we transition those housing subsidy from that project to this one. That requires HUD approval, it requires city support, it requires county support, it requires environmental reviews, it requires broker's opinion of value, all of those sorts of things. So we are doing our due diligence. We're in process with that. We just had a broker's opinion of value completed. The good news for the city of Castleton is it's going to bring two pieces of property onto the tax rolls because they were under a voluntary pilot. Prior to that, the Housing Authority was paying 10% of rents received as a voluntary pilot. That amounted to about $4,700 per year. The taxable value of those lots that are going to go back on the market, they're valued at about $2.3 million. So the taxable amount from that could be anywhere from $23,000, $24,000 to $30,000, depending on the revenues generated and how the final sale of that goes. So the city, generally speaking, in the informal conversations has been understanding. We've also had public hearings with the residents of those homes. Each and every single one of them will receive a housing choice voucher, which is a subsidy that they can take with them actually anywhere in the United States and still receive the same level of subsidy that they've been getting for that home in Castleton. So there will be no tenant that will be left behind. They will all get housing moving relocation assistance and both financial and support and finding a new place to live. And any that are eligible that choose to wait a couple of years until the construction is completed will have the first opportunity to move into the new building as well. So I know it's not a full, firm thumbs up, but we've done our due diligence and continue to work with them and have very strong optimism of having the support not only of the community of Castleton, but also the tenants as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Item number 4 on the regular agenda is project number 9036, I-94 and 26th Street West. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer, and Casey Sanders Berglund, Economic Development Manager. And the point of this discussion is to the authorization and the purchase of land for a future 26th Street West and I-94 interchange. Good evening, Mr. Hansen. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and fellow commissioners. This is a topic that's come up at several different commission meetings. If you recall, back in March of this year, staff was authorized to negotiate with the landowner excuse me, for the potential purchase of a property that would be purchased for the city to acquire some land that would be used for future right-of-way for a potential interchange at the intersection of I-94 and 26th Street. We've had numerous meetings with the developer, who has a representative here as well, and we've had a lot of discussions with this, and we had a final meeting earlier this month with them where we were able to verbally negotiate value of purchase of this property. Where we ended up at was a total of $8 per square foot for the 134,465 square foot, which would be Lot 10 of the Sand Hills 6th Edition proposed plat that hasn't been finalized yet, which would bring it to a purchase price of $1,075,720. In the packet, I also included that there is an existing $106,936.58 of existing special assessments. So I am showing that in the packet, so that way the commission does have the full encumbrance of what the city would be taking with this purchase. So if you add those two numbers together, the total amount of the acquisition would equate to $1,182,656.58. The value of having this property is it's a very good opportunity for the city, in my opinion. There have been some studies that have been done, particularly by Metrocog, where 26th Street was identified as a future north-south major corridor through through the city. After the diversion is completed, there's a swath of land that's located south of the diversion, west of the existing city, that would be developed. And without this interchange, that development would have two options to access the Fargo-Moorhead area. That would be to back up a mile, possibly 2 miles west to the Raymond interchange to get on the interstate, or they would have to funnel through the Brooks Harbor addition, and that is not an option with the amount of traffic that is currently. We talked about the backup during peak hour traffic on 26th Avenue, and we cannot have that new land having access to West Fargo through existing residential neighborhoods. So for point one, we would want to make sure that if we are able to get this interchange constructed, that would give all those areas south of the interstate access to the interstate where they can move about and provide the transportation needed to get to wherever they're going without either, again, backing up to the Raymond interchange or going through a residential neighborhood. From the north side perspective, that's our future growth area. If you look at where the diversion is planned to be constructed, 26th Street is the only major north-south corridor that is basically, it doesn't have any restrictions to it for travelability with the river, with the diversion, things of that nature. So if you were to take a snapshot of the city of West Fargo 50 years from now, I think you would see 26th Street be a critical piece of our traffic infrastructure to get traffic through the city. There is a lot of existing businesses. There's a proposed development that's going to be industrial. These eventually, when we have truck traffic and things of that nature that are going to be accessing those areas, those trucks don't have to funnel east to 21st Street to access Main. They would be able to access the interstate. So to me, this is an opportunity that makes sense that 10, 15 years from now, I think future commissions will look back and value this, hopefully the decision, in my opinion again, that could be made today to secure this land. When we do approach the DOT for an interchange, one of the questions they're going to ask us is, do you have the right of way to construct it? And if we do not purchase this land, which the developer has no obligation to sell us, this is mutually exclusive from their development. In fact, they would, the price that we eventually negotiated to that's in the packet is a price that lower than that they would prefer not to sell to us, because it's, in their opinion, even more valuable than that, especially with frontage on 26th Street. So this is some of the most valuable land in their proposed development. But they also understand what the city of West Fargo needs, how it's going to impact the future use of the facilities that they plan to create, and also the future growth of West Fargo to the north. So this purchase is, again, in my opinion, a very good opportunity for us to lock up land that would be able to construct at least one of the alternatives that I had presented in the last commission meeting. If you recall, in the last commission meeting, I also got authorization for staff to go and negotiate with the Hazer property as well. Not here to speak on that. We've just initiated discussions with them. So we're I guess we're not ready to talk about that yet as well. But by securing this property, we know that we would at least be able to fit one, if not two, of some of the potential interchanges that we've had drafted as concepts. So it gives us a chance to be able to construct this in the future. Again, if we don't purchase it and the developer keeps it, they're going to probably want to develop it, obviously. And then if we do need that interchange in the future, it's very good potential that we would be buying out existing businesses at that point in time, tearing them down for this interchange, which is not a desirable option at that time either. So that would be my presentation as far as what I see the value in this at. I'd stand for questions. And again, Casey Berglund Sanders is here to answer any questions as well. As far as the funding side, as at the last commission meeting, Commissioner President Dardis requested that she be available for comment as well on the funding side of this.
Thank you. Questions?
Not really a
Commissioner
question. If we do buy this and then interchange does go in and it doesn't take up that whole lot, we could then sell that.
Yeah, we could either use it for public facilities of our own, maybe a future fire hall, maybe a police station, or if there is no use that we would see for it at that point in time, we could market the property. The developer has offered to buy it back at the same price at any given moment that we'd like to sell it back to them at, but I respectfully turned down that offer from them as well.
So the $8 a square foot figure, was that arrived on by your review of some comparable sales and whatever?
There were some comparable values that were provided by the developer that showed anywhere between $8 to $10 to $12 per square foot. Some of the examples were more applicable than others. They're really a dollar amount for commercial, or I'm sorry, for light industrial that's going to be rezoned in this area. You'd have a hard time finding an exact comp, but they did provide 4 different, in our negotiation sessions, they did provide 4 different spots that they showed that were sold for more than that. And if that answers your question.
Tell me the discussion that takes place that we're incurring the assessments for the improvements that were on that property prior to. Why would we agree to that as part of the negotiation?
The assessments for any
if the $8 a square foot was based on comps and the like, why would we incur this expense as well?
I would say, first of all, I don't have knowledge of the comps. If the dollar amount for the purchase typically would never include the cost of the assumed assessments. So the comps that we were seeing were for purchases, I believe, that would not have included existing special assessments on those properties. As with any land purchase, whether it's a home or anything, there are existing assessments, and the assessments, like any property, they follow the property and are assumed by the future owner of the property.
Okay. Would the purchase of this property be contingent only if the Sand Hills development project moves forward? Is that part of the discussion?
No, this is mutually exclusive from the Sand Hills discussion because we need this intersection for future 26th Street, regardless of whether the Sand Hills 6th edition proceeds forward or not. The intention would be that we would purchase this property actually prior to them platting that development, before that development becomes, before that plat becomes final. The intention would be that the city of West Fargo would be the owner of Lot 10. And when the Sand Hills 6th edition does get platted, we would be the owners prior to that plat. If the development falls apart, we still remain owners of the property.
So with all of the work that you've done on this, Mr. Hanson, when would you, in your mind, project that the 26th Street, how far in the future are we making this purchase? You know, time is money. And,
yep, absolutely.
They're $1 million today, and $1 million 10 years from now or $15 is substantial. So what's your projected timeline on this? That we would hold this property?
Yeah, the The first thing that I would say is that getting an interchange is not a fast process dealing with the DOT. There's a study that we're planning on doing, having MetroCog do, starting next year, that would be a study for the 26th Street corridor, as well as potentially making an overpass on the 13th Avenue corridor over I-94 as well. So that study would move forward next year, which would, MetroCog has already in their Northwest area planning document in the past has identified 26 as that corridor. So now we're basically to the first step in getting these interchanges, these overpasses, is to have that study done. Once the study is done, then we would be able to we would petition basically the DOT to take on this project, and we would enter into whatever process that they would need us to go through. It's not uncommon for an interchange to get constructed 8 years after you've started the process. So it is a lengthy process. The design of an interchange can potentially take a year or two ahead of time. So if I was to grab my magic 8-ball and and give you a date of when this would happen, until the diversion is created and development happens and additional traffic, is added to that corridor, we're at the level of service that exists today. I would say that they're talking, the intent is that the diversion would be certified in 2030. That would open up a lot of land that would come out of the floodplain. Once that land comes out of the floodplain, I think there's going to be a lot of developers wanting to do work in that area. We would like to time this after that time frame. So we're in 2023 now. I would say the likely 2032, 2033 would be probably the earliest I would guess that we would see this interchange.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Commissioners, anything else?
Just
Commissioner Simmons.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would just make the comment that these are economic development dollars, so in no way does this affect property tax, which is what everybody's going to think right away. So we need to make that clear, and that money's there. I mean, so I think if we need to do it, we need to do it today. It's going to save us a lot of money if we wait till 2030. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Commissioner Olson?
He stole my thunder.
I'm sorry.
Anyone else? Any comments? What's your thoughts?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Commissioner Simmons moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Olson seconds. Been moved and seconded to approve and authorize the purchase of land for the future 26th Street West and I-94 interchange as presented this evening by Mr. Hanson. Is there any further questions or any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Mayor,
Yes, please.
5-minute break.
Certainly. 5-minute break. We stand recessed. We'll reconvene the West Fargo City Commission meeting for August 21st after a short recess. The next order of business is item number 5 on the regular agenda, which is project number 2273, a traffic signal installation. Again, we're going to call on Mr. Dan Hansen, our city engineer, and the purpose of this discussion is to accept a bid and award a contract. Mr. Hansen, good evening again. Welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and fellow commissioners. This is another project that's been in front of you a few times. This is for a traffic signal installation. This is just the 23rd Avenue East where Costco's parking lot exits. It's a very much needed and wanted traffic signal in that area. We were approved to go out to bids, and we did have 3 proposals that were received. One proposal was rejected, and the lowest responsible bidder was Fargo Electric Construction, was the lowest qualifying bidder, and their amount was $834,166.28. We had originally had this as a $1.5 million project in the 2022 CIP. And the estimated construction cost on the project on the engineer's report presented in April was $876,150, which did include 10% contingency. So we are near what that estimate was. This project, for a financial piece of it, would be proposed to utilize the $512,112.71 that remains in the 2012 Costco Business Incentives Sales Tax Bond Fund, and then the rest of the cost is proposed to be paid via capital improvement sales tax. So we are not proposing that there would be any special assessments with this project. And with that, I would make the recommendation that we accept the bid and award the contract to Fargo Electric Construction.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Anderson.
I just want to validate my math here real quick. So with what we have in that bond fund, and then the cost here, the difference is about $364,000. Is that correct?
The difference between the $876,150 and the $512,112. Yeah, that sounds
okay. So that would be coming out of the sales tax, capital improvement sales tax then.
Yep. Okay. As well as their soft costs on the project. We hired a consultant to design it, and the city's engineering staff is going to oversee the construction of it. So we do not have a consultant hired for during construction. That will be our staff doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any additional questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Anderson, second. It's been moved and seconded to accept the bid and award the contract for project number 2273, a traffic signal installation. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Olson.
When would the construction take place? Did I miss that?
No, the completion date on the project is actually, I believe, September of next year.
Okay.
The poles are 54-week delivery. The one thing that you might see is in numerous projects, we've talked about the negative turning movements for the left turn lanes. So there are some median improvements to make that happen, and some sidewalk. That could potentially happen yet this year, but it's basically being left to the contractor. They might want to just start and do it all next year, but you could see some of that flat work happen this year.
Okay.
I don't know if that will happen or not, but the completion date for the project would be next fall.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Again, I have a motion and a second to accept the bid and award the contract. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Hansen. Item number 6 is yours as well. Project number 4069, Eaglewood Pond Repair. Mr. Dan Hansen, City Engineer, City of West Fargo. Purpose of this discussion is to create a project number 4069, accept a quote and award a contract. Please.
Thank you, Commissioner President Dardis and Commissioners. This was a late addition to the packet. There's been, let me just bring it up. On the Eaglewood First Edition Pond, there is a slide in the location that I'm showing on the screen where you can see the land is sliding into the pond, basically. This pond is, the property lines that you see on this are actual. So the city actually owns the pond. It's not like some of the other developments that we have where the residential properties go down into the water of the pond. This is all owned by the city of West Fargo. The slide was first noticed, I believe, when Public Works was having, when they were out mowing. We've done some investigations into it, and the slide actually, after investigation, does actually extend up into 3 private properties into their yards. We have had discussions with them and doing the work, and we do have agreements in place that we can do some work on their properties. By the time that you get onto their properties, it's a very shallow excavation. It's more just tying in the grading to the project, but it does go behind a fence, so there's a fence removal and replacement, but we have that into our project. So we did work with Braun Intertech to get geotechnical analysis of what to do to correct this, so that way we don't have to, if you go up there and just regrade the slope, it can very easily and likely happen again. So this project would include draining the pond. We wouldn't be draining the whole ponds that are all connected to it. There would be the pipe that goes underneath 9th there would be plugged, so that way we're not draining the rest of the system out. We would just drain this pond. We would be in communication with everybody along there because some of them likely sprinkle their yards out of the pond, and just to let them know of the project and make sure that if they are pumping out of it for their sprinkler systems, that they're not burning up their pumps because we're draining the pond down. And then the intent would be to do the work yet this year, and that's why this was a late addition to the packet. We had solicited quotes from 3 contractors. We received word back from 2 of them that they're too busy to do the work, and we did receive 1 quote from Industrial Builders Incorporated in the amount of $144,120 to do this work. That's a little higher than I had expected the dollar amount to come in at. However, I don't believe that it's unreasonable for it. This is the last opportunity. If we were to table this, we would likely just need to probably rebid it out this winter and do it next year. However, I don't know if the slide would get worse, if it would move closer to the homes or anything like that. So that's why I'm putting it in the packet tonight for your consideration. If we award it tonight, then we would be able to get moving with industrial builders to do this work yet this fall. And instead of, if we were to wait till next year, we would want to wait until after all the spring rains and we get into the drier part of the summer to do this work again next year. So we would be basically pushing it off a year if we were to table it, but I feel that it would be advantageous to get this work done now. So that way it doesn't get any worse and we can correct the issue. This is a city of West Fargo issue that's affecting some private residences who have been expressing concerns over the fault that's in their yard. So with that, I'd entertain any questions.
Questions? Mr. Head? Commissioner Olson?
Have we checked to see if this slough could expand? Have you looked, did Brown Intertech check the other properties on either side to see if they're just putting a Band-Aid on something that could grow?
You can drive past and see it where the extents of it are, and once that slide occurs, it's there. If, say, the slide were to continue to occur, then it could expand, but if with what we're doing right now, we're hoping that we don't feel that it should expand if we do this now, and that's been our conversations with Braun. And then the way that we have the bid right now is we're paying them per lineal feet of slide repair. So say when we get out there and they start their excavation and they're doing their work, if we notice that disturbance of the soils moves it a little bit, then it's a unit price contract where we're paying per foot, so we would be able to expand the project to take care of anything that we could see potentially happening.
Commissioner George?
More out of curiosity, so this is, as a commissioner, this is the first time I remember hearing about something like this. Is it pretty unusual to have sloughing or slumping on a retention pond, or Is that kind of common, or?
You do see it. We do know that there are some other ponds in town that do have some issues. My goal is when we come out with our next CIP, I would like to get in that CIP either an annual or a biannual amount placeholder that we can use to start fixing these ponds if we see similar situations such as this. That way we can at least plan financially for it. Might not be actually identifying we're going to do this one first or not, but basically every year or two, whichever it is on the CIP, we would be able to go and take an inventory of our ponds, find out are there issues, and then when I'm standing in front of you the next time, we can say that this was planned for. This one here was not planned for. I do know on the 2022 CIP, we did have another one that we feel that we can push off for a little bit, so that way we can take care of this one, and that other one would likely be the first one that we would want to tackle when we do the next slide repair project on these. Now,
You also alluded to something as far as this one is completely on city property. Is it something like if a private property backed up to it, would that resident be responsible for the repair, or then would it still fall on city, being a city residential, or a city?
We do have easements around our ponds for access, and there is a responsibility for these ponds for us to provide the stormwater protection for the whole development. So in my opinion, if we were to find another, for example, say on the Wilds, where we have properties that go all the way down into the pond, if we were to discover that on that, I would never come back forth and recommend these 3 property owners need to pay for that. If there was any form of a cost share by properties, it would be a regional wide, everybody that's tied into that system, because the integrity of our ponds in this spot are affecting all of the residents that are within the watershed of that pond system.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Simmons seconds. Been moved and seconded to create project number 4069 to accept the quote and award a contract to deal with the Eaglewood Pond repair of sloughing. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Item number 7 is an update of the Building Exploratory Committee meeting. Mr. Brad Olson, Commissioner. For past agendas and minutes, visit the website. Commissioner Olson.
Thank you. In your packet, and I've handed out to you too, is the last page of our agenda. Just giving a brief synopsis of our endeavors. Commissioner George was on the same committee, and most of this information was already published in the Fargo Forum because it was a public-facing committee, so we had a reporter in for every meeting. Our efforts have kind of stalled out when we got down to the second and last paragraph, when we got the cost estimate of that $80 to $100 million, and that's kind of when we're going to take we're going to pivot at that point, and then other things happened within the city. So it wasn't a high priority at that time to continue our efforts there. Our team leader, Dustin, was and still is very busy in making sure that the city keeps functioning as it is. But basically, I want to reach out to each one of you commissioners and just have a little one-on-one to bring you up to speed on some other things that have been in the works and considerations. To hear your thoughts on it too, once you hear some of the needs. The biggest need is police department. We need to get something rolling on that. It's unfortunate that one that was constructed a short time ago, it wasn't large enough for the growth, and hopefully with the help of this consultant we have, RLE, and our knowledge of where we're going to land, we can get it right this time. So that's all I wanted to mention.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions of the commissioners? Or Commissioner George, who also was part of the committee? All right, very good, thank you. City Administrator's Report, Dustin Scott. Assistant City Administrator, has two items on the agenda at present, the budget update and a city administrator update by our human resources manager. Mr. Scott, welcome.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and Commissioners. I'll be brief. Just wanted to share an update that we've been, since the preliminary budget was approved on August 7th, we have been working diligently to look for additional expenditure cuts. We believe that we have been making some good progress with that. We've conducted some additional one-on-one meetings with commissioners to review things like our reserve balances and other special funds that weren't available at the last meeting. So again, I think we're making great progress. With that, I guess I'd keep it that brief and answer any questions you have.
I'd like to support that through the efforts of Ryan Graft and, of course, Heidi Delmar and Dustin Scott. There was some additional information that's been brought forward and fine-tuned, if you will. And so I'm very grateful for the three of them and the work that they've done, and I'm confident that they've shared it with you other commissioners. With regard to some of the questions that were asked, one in particular, a great question by Commissioner George, was the absolute total amount of reserves that we have. I've been, for way too long, I was always given kind of a general number, and so I'm very grateful that we finally have that final number, and it changes the disposition of some of my thought process of how we move the budget forward and how we deal with the taxpayers of West Fargo, what's the very best for them. So please continue.
The only thing I'd mention is last week we did get the preliminary budget uploaded to our website, so it is available for the public to review. The September 5th meeting, we hope to bring a draft of the final budget. So with that, I turn it over to our HR manager, Sarah.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Commission President and Commissioners. How are y'all doing tonight? I just come with a very brief update on our city administrator search. I've been working with Baker Tilly, our provider for that, and specifically our consultant, Patty, as well as our city attorney, John Shockley, to update our timeline for the commission search, or for the administrator search, so that we have a better idea as to when different pieces will take place. The one thing I do need to bring in front of you all is the ability to set a special meeting to review the candidates that will be brought forth from Baker Tilly in order for you to select those that you would like to have a formal interview with. And so according to the timeline that we had established, we would be looking to hold that special meeting either on September 7th, 8th, or 11th, depending on how your guys' calendars permitted.
I always give the commissioners the dickens about having their phones on, so now they're gonna, you just authorized them all to turn their phones on.
I'm standing here in front of a really big phone, so I can't say anything.
What were those dates again?
The 7th, 8th, or 11th of September. This would allow for you guys to receive the application packets for each of the candidates that made it through the initial selection, i.e. they met the criteria. And so you would see all of those that met the criteria. You'd receive that information on August 31st, potentially. And that would give you time to review all of those documents to then meet on, again, the 7th, 8th, or 11th in order to select candidates to be interviewed.
A certain time of the day?
Nope.
So you would want a special meeting for us to actually select that candidate? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. So you would, the idea here being that they are given a certain questionnaire to answer, and we would then look at that documentation from them. You would select who you would want to interview. We would then conduct a virtual interview with those. From there, of course, we would select the finalists, which then, of course, have to be public according to Century Code, and we would have those on-site interviews at a later date.
If I could, this is Mr. Shockley, do you have something you'd like to add to this? Okay. If you'll recall, recently, one of our neighbors had an opening for their city administrator. And there were a lot of discussions about this and that, And this was the assistant city administrator. No, I think it was for the city administrator. And there were two candidates. One was actually in town, and the other one was, I think, scheduled to be in town a day or so later, that they dropped out because their names were going to be, and they had not had discussions with their existing employers. And of course, the North Dakota open meeting laws are something that we have to respect, and we have to understand how they go. But at the same time, there are some safeguards that, as our HR director and as our city attorney, that we need to help this process be as rewarding as we want it to be in getting the best candidates. And by not, some of these candidates are going to be sensitive to having that information relayed to their existing employers. So we're going to follow every letter of the law, but we might require that we have a special meeting. Okay? That's
Maybe
Mr.
just
Shockley?
to make, thank you, Mr. Commission President, just to kind of, the names of any of your candidates are confidential until you select up to 5 finalists to interview. So we're still working through the structure of how that process looks, but the initial run of candidates, let's just, and I don't know the number, but let's say there's 15, and the 15 that you would be looking at, those names and information and personal identifying information are not public. You can't release those. But once you choose, say, 3 of them or 4 of them as a finalist, then their names become public. And we're working through the final mechanics of what that looks like, but we just wanted to kind of get a clarification if the commission was okay with having a special meeting to do that initial, take the 15 down to 5 or 3 or whatever the number is.
And we'll totally rely on the expertise and the guidance of our human resources, Mrs. Gasovic. So, is that a consensus, Commissioners?
Yes.
I see nodding heads. Okay, we have a consensus on that.
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Were we going to choose the meeting date today?
That would be ideal. It would be ideal if we could at least narrow it down to a day. We can get a time maybe a little bit later, but it would be ideal for both our consultant, I'm sure Mr. Sharkley, and myself if we had a game plan.
So you're looking at the 7th, which is a Thursday, the 8th, a Friday, the 11th, a Monday.
Yes. This is to allow for you to select those candidates down and then for an appropriate amount of time to do the full background checking of those candidates and vetting process before we would bring them in again.
11th, yeah.
Oh, it'll be the same day as Labor Day?
Labor Day is September 5th, so you guys will have a commission meeting that Tuesday.
I'm in Wyoming.
How about
I'm out of
the
state.
11th is a
technically
Monday?
September 4th.
Monday the 11th? Are you in town?
That's a commission meeting anyway, that?
No.
Nope, we're on the
Nope.
5th.
Oh, I got my, what's that?
We meet on the 5th.
Okay.
The 11th is good for me.
I get back from, I won't be in town till about 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Do we do a 4 o'clock or something?
I'm gonna say, should we set a 3 or a 4 o'clock that day?
Sure, yeah, whatever.
4 o'clock?
Ideally, everybody will have already looked through the applications and gotten an idea of their top people that they would like to see as candidates, and so with luck, it won't be a very long meeting, but, so 4 o'clock meeting on the 11th?
Look good for
Yeah.
everybody? Fine with me.
Okay.
You'll be back, maybe a couple hours.
Or do you want
I
to,
need to be careful how I say this, but with air travel sometimes right now.
You're right, oh, yeah.
So don't throw
You're not
anything at me,
wrong.
Commissioner George, but.
You're not.
If
the
necessary, we
way
could
air
set it up for a
travel is,
virtual.
Who knows if I'll be back or not.
Well,
But I'll have a chance to review it and I'll share my notes.
so is there a reason why we couldn't do it on the 12th or something, give an extra day in there on a Tuesday? Is there some reason you picked?
I do believe that our consultant had a conflict with the 12th.
Okay. What's on the 12th?
I believe that our consultant, Patty, had a conflict with the 12th.
Baker Tilly couldn't make it.
Baker Tilly, sorry, Baker Tilly had
Oh, okay, so,
a conflict with the 12th. That's how he landed on that day.
What if we go 5:30 on Monday? That way it'll
give them plenty of
give the
time.
mayor a little extra time.
Fine with me.
Do it normal commission time on a Monday.
Normal
and
commission time
Sure.
on a Monday.
Would that work?
Yep.
Works for me.
So 5:30 on September 11th?
Yep.
Perfect. I will let our consultant know. Thank you.
Thank you.
You'll send out invites?
Yes.
What's on our calendar?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scott?
That's all we have. Report.
Okay, thank you. What is our next order of business?
Correspondence.
Okay, please.
Thank you, Commission President Dardis and members of the commission. So for correspondence this week, I'd like to remind you that last week I did share with you a memo from Chief Otterness, and at his request, I'd like to read that aloud for the public to hear it. It is addressed to myself as the Assistant City Administrator and titled Retirement Notification. So here I will begin in Chief Otterness's words. This memorandum serves as official notice of my intent to retire from my position as the Chief of Police with the City of West Fargo effective Friday, October 6th, 2023. I want to express my deepest gratitude to you, the former City Administrator Tina Fisk, the West Fargo City Commission, and the entire community for entrusting me to serve as the city's Chief of Police for the past 3 years. This truly has been the highlight of my law enforcement career, and I will be eternally grateful for the opportunity to spend the last several years of my 33-year law enforcement career serving this community. Over the past 3 years, the West Fargo Police Department has experienced tremendous successes while also experiencing a number of traumatic personnel-related critical incidents. The tragic on-duty loss of Lieutenant Adam Gustafson, followed shortly by the on-duty heart-related medical emergency involving Officer Tim T.J. Brown, will forever weigh heavy on my mind and the hearts and minds of the department staff. This community, however, has helped us heal through their incredible and continuous outpouring of love and support. I want to assure you and the entire West Fargo community that in my absence, every member of the West Fargo Police Department is fully committed to continuing to provide the highest level of public safety service to our residents and visitors. The entire police department staff is, without question, some of the most talented, most dedicated, highly educated, and competent professionals I have had the opportunity to serve with. With many department challenges ahead, I will dedicate my last several weeks to making sure the transition to new department leadership will be as smooth and seamless as possible. Thanks again for the opportunity to serve alongside some of the finest this noble profession has. Gratefully, Dennis Otterness, Chief of Police. So, and if I may, I'd like to make a brief statement of my own.
Please.
Throughout my career, I've been fortunate to work with many exceptional leaders with the utmost class and character. I feel that Chief Otterness, without question, fits that bill, and I am extremely honored to have had the privilege to work with him for the past few years. His dedication and commitment to law enforcement and public service is absolutely inspirational. I know I'm not alone in saying that while I will certainly miss him dearly, I wish him and his family all the best in retirement. I'd also like to add, and again, I know I'm not alone, when I say I express my full confidence and support in Assistant Chief Nilsson, as well as the command staff and the entire department, in continuing to keep our community safe and a great place to live, work, and play. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. One of the things that really struck out when you dealt with Chief Otterness is what a public servant he really was. But he was an empathetic public servant. Empathetic and understanding to his existing staff and the individuals that he commanded, to the community as a whole, how he addressed them, and then how he was recognized across the state as a leader. So on behalf of myself and the entire City Commission, we want to thank Chief Otterness for his 33 years in law enforcement, and especially for these last 3 years that he served as our Chief of Police. Under his leadership, our department has grown. It's evolved and become one of the best law enforcement agencies in the upper Midwest, if not in the nation. And I believe this with my whole heart and soul. Chief Otterness has implemented new initiatives and in programs, including, and this is an example of the empathetic type of leader that he was, the addition of an advanced cardiac screening program. When Officer Tim Brown suffered that emergency, Commissioner Simmons and I were standing in the emergency area at Essentia Health at 6:30 in that morning. And we, as commissioners, made a commitment that he'd have our full cooperation in working with that. Through the chief's leadership, going to the state of North Dakota, and yes, there were others of us that participated in the testimony that was given, but it was the leadership of Dennis Otterness that got us over. We took it through the House committees and the Senate committees. And we all know that the legislature is an interesting place to visit. We lost one vote in the North Dakota legislature after Chief Otterness, through his leadership, made our case. He's implemented the body-worn camera program, the Comfort Dog program with West Fargo Public Schools, which they are ecstatic about. What these two animals, these two dogs that we have working with the younger children. And an ongoing peace officer training program with Lake Region State College. Another amazing feather in Chief Otterness's and his command staff's hat for what they've done. And West Fargo's first public transparency dashboard, so you know where the crimes are being committed, what type of crimes, the time of day, everything like that. I expounded on Chief Otterness was influential of passing House Bill 2079 to also expand the workers' compensation coverage for full-time law enforcement and firefighters across North Dakota. He not only fought for our officers in our department, this affects every U.S. Marshal that's a North Dakota employee. It includes the border guards that are North Dakota. It includes the Highway Patrol. It includes the North Dakota Sheriff's Department, and it includes all municipal jurisdictions and their police forces. That was under the leadership of Chief Otterness. I happened to tag along on all of those, and I also testified. But they sat up straighter when the man in blue was speaking, as it should, out of respect for our law enforcement community. So with that, I want to thank Chief Otterness for his dedication to law enforcement and service to our community here in West Fargo. He's been a good one. We wish him and his family nothing but the very best in retirement. Obviously, when you look at him, he's a strapping, healthy, young whatever he is, and we wish him the very best to enjoy his retirement. 33 years of dedicated public service to the patrons of it he served. That's an amazing accomplishment. And I'm going to miss my friend, Dennis Otterness, as well. Thank you. Any other correspondence?
No, I don't.
Please. You have none? Okay.
Nope, I have none.
Commissioners, any non-agenda items you'd like to bring forward? Staff, department heads, any non-agenda items? Pete, I want to pass an invitation on to you and the chief. He owes me a good stogie before he leaves. We gotta sit in his patio and have another cigar. So with that, Commissioner Simmons,
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Olson,
Second.
we are adjourned.